When standing on the shore looking out across the waves of Lake Superior, it's difficult to judge the dangers that are amongst the rolling swells. This lake is an inland sea that stretches 160 miles wide by 360 miles long. The frigid waters cause hypothermia to anyone that is submerged in them for too long. While there isn't a more pristine, beautiful body of water to paddle in, kayakers should always take heed of the possible hazards when shoving off the shore. Over the past 30 years, sea kayaking has become a recreational activity that has allowed hundreds, thousands of individuals seeking adventure, vacations, or fun to safely explore the Apostle Islands National Lakeshore. Every paddler has the obligation of preparing themselves for whatever conditions Lake Superior is capable of producing. Because of the lake's incredible power and unpredictability, the National Park Service does not recommend canoes or small open boats, as well as sit-on-top kayaks, inflatable boats, or kayaks with sails. We also do not recommend paddling solo trips for island-to-island crossings. The National Park Service recommends kayakers use wetsuits or dry suits while paddling in the Apostles. This is especially important during the spring and fall seasons for risk of hypothermia from cold exposure. Hypothermia occurs when the core body temperature is reduced below normal.
I was out at Myers Beach at the Sea Caves, and the weather started to kick up, and the water was still very cold. I would say between 38 and 42 degrees Fahrenheit, and he flipped over, and luckily I was right next to him, and I grabbed his boat and I did what's called an assisted T-rescue.
Having the proper equipment and skill to use the equipment can prevent disaster for kayakers on Lake Superior. Brightly colored boats and equipment will offer paddlers greater visibility for other vessels. Proper equipment and suitable boats can be rented or purchased from several kayaking outfitters in the local Bayfield area.
This is a typical Sea Kayak. This one I think is about 17 feet long. It has double bulkheads. So if you look right here, you can see there's a wall right here behind the seat, and then there's actually another one right there. So what that does is it separates the front area and the back area from the rest of the boat. So you have this instant flotation, and you also have a cockpit. So that if you do flip over and you get water in the cockpit, this is the only place that you have to dump the water out from. Probably one of the most important things and what you've heard about is a wetsuit. And this is a 3mm wetsuit. This is your first layer, actually over this polypropylene or some sort of non-cotton long underwear top. So I would wear this first with the wetsuit over the top as my first layer. And then over the top of that, this is what we call a paddling jacket. So this isn't so much for super thermal, but it is so it can break the wind.
2 should be your PFD, which stands for Personal Flotation Device.
The spray skirt, there are lots of different types. This is a neoprene one. You can get nylon ones.
Again, always being prepared for the cold weather. Some neoprene booties, gloves. Especially paddling, you want your hands to stay warm.
This is called a paddle float. What I can use this for is actually to blow up. This blows up kind of like a balloon, and then it fits over the end of my paddle. And I can use this, if we pretend the kayak's right here, we use this as an outrigger and we can use it to climb back on our boat.
Bilge pump. Squirts water out.
Of course, first aid kit. I also have a repair kit in case I need to have if something happens with my boat.
You always want a map and a compass. I have this in a waterproof case.
This is called a strobe. So the strobe I can use as another signaling device. I'll also bring flares along if I'm going to go out into the more of the outer islands.
Spare clothing. Have a dry bag full of fleece polypropylene, couple layers for top and bottom. Hat and gloves, never cotton. Wool is another good material. Always keep that with you in your boat. Even on hot days like this, you never know when you're going to need it.
Binoculars are also a great tool because, as I was saying earlier, you might look out and say, oh, that's really calm, but if you look through the binoculars and look farther, say at the sea caves, then you see the big waves jumping over the top of the caves, you're going to be able to see them with the binoculars, so it's just another way of checking out your surroundings before you go out. The most important safety gear is going to be your marine radio, and this is great because it also has the weather channels on it, so I can listen to the most up-to-date weather all the time, and I can communicate with someone if I need to.
Once you have the proper equipment, boat, and attire, you could be ready to start your paddling journey. Before you leave, we would like to encourage you to develop an itinerary and leave it with a friend. Also, before you leave, there are a few things that you should take into consideration for your flow plan, such as how far are you going to paddle between resting stops? In one day, we estimate a good distance for beginners is 10 miles and 15 miles for those with experience. Where can you take your kayak out? Shorelines can change from sheer cliffs to beaches, so recognize where you can land your boat safely. You can use maps and shoreline charts for this. For staying overnight, a backcountry permit is required. Your backcountry permit, as well as charts and maps, can be obtained at the Bayfield and Little Sand Bay Visitor Centers. As you paddle away from the shore, you could be paddling towards memories that'll last a lifetime. On the horizon is wildlife, scenic shorelines, and colorful historic sites which will appease every outdoor enthusiast. Everyone can find something that they can appreciate and enjoy amongst these 22 islands. While kayaking, though, it is best to remember common sense can keep you from taking dangerous risks, and proper equipment and practice could save your life.
The camera was turned off. Do it again.
What?
I said the camera, I'm sorry, the camera wasn't recording. Do it again.